Chris Bolton and Jasmine James from Delta Airlines. They are on the line. I believe they are not muted at the moment, so we can test out and make sure that they are. Bring the presentation up here. Chris and Jasmine, can we do a quick sound check with you to make sure that we can?
Hey, Derek.
Hey.
Hey, good morning or good afternoon, I guess. I've been in a room where I can't see outside, so to me it looks like the same time since I started at 7 a.m. this morning or so. So good afternoon. Delta Airlines, are you guys based in Atlanta, down south of us here?
We are. We're Hartsfield Jackson, Atlanta.
Nice, nice. So a busy airport on a daily basis. So a lot of, I think, as with a lot of businesses, you think about Delta Airlines and you think about Atlanta's huge airport, the terminals there, the planes and the people moving back and forth, and you really think of an airline as, hey, they're planes and, getting people on board and flying them to different cities. But myself, flying a lot, I know that there's a lot of interaction with me and software and airlines in order to get my tickets, which are fully electronic now, to check the schedule of the planes, to check in, to make reservations, I'm sure to schedule all of your employees and your ticketing systems and all that. So it's a huge operation, not just a small niche part of how an airline works. And as part of that, getting software developed, rolling it out on time, making sure it's extremely reliable, because when it isn't, folks like me can't check in for a flight or get the information that we need to. So I'm really interested in hearing your perspective as you work at Delta, and kind of how the organization works, a little insight into that, and your CI/CD processes there that, of course, as your title says, include Nexus and how you rolled it out into a large organization, but just getting a sense of your journey there. So we are right on time at 4:15 for our start time. So I don't want to delay anymore. We want an on-time departure for the presentation, so let's go.
Well, thank you so much, Derek, and thank you, Sonatype, for having us today to talk about our journey through the process of rolling out Nexus here at Delta Airlines. So just to get started, we just wanted to introduce ourselves to you all. I'm Chris Bolton. I'm a development tools engineer here at Delta Airlines. I also have a background in application development. I have been at Delta since April of 2017, where I came into the company to basically help out with bringing in new tools and technologies into the company. So Sonatype Nexus is one of those products that we brought in for our binary repository. And so just a little background on what I enjoy and what I do. So I enjoy spending time with my family, playing sports and games. And just a fun fact about myself, I've actually ran multiple marathons and a handful of half marathons as well. So Jasmine, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Jasmine James, also a development tools engineer on the team working with Chris. My background is primarily in automated testing, working with UI testing, mobile applications, that sort of stuff. I started here at Delta in February of 2017, so just a couple of months before Chris, but we both started in the initial implementation of our tool chain here at Delta. I enjoy traveling, of course, with my family, and completing small home improvement projects that sometimes don't go as planned, but it's still fun nonetheless. Fun fact, if I wasn't an engineer, I'd probably be doing real estate full time because I love getting my hands dirty, fixing up houses, that sort of stuff. So Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit more about Delta's history?
So like Derek said, Delta is a large company and we are an old company. So just a little fun fact, Delta started in May 30th of 1924 in Macon, Georgia, and now we are located in Atlanta, Georgia. So since we are such an old company, then we also have some pretty old legacy tech systems and technology. One thing that we have internally is IBM Rational ClearCase. So Delta has been using ClearCase for 20 plus years or so, and it's a great tool, and it has served its purpose very well in the past. But as far as the industry goes, no one really knows what ClearCase is coming out of college, and it's just an old tool. So that brings up some change. We also have a tool that's totally internal. It's called the RET Depot, the Release Engineering Team Depot. And basically, it's just our homegrown binary repository. And again, this is something the industry doesn't even know. So it's not even known outside of Delta. It's a great tool again. It's been around for 20 years or so, and it's a binary repository. It was built before Sonatype, and it served its purpose very well. However, as the industry's been changing, then we have different challenges we have to face, and we want to keep up with the industry standard knowledge. So this kind of brings up a frowny face in a lot of people's eyes because, oh, we're working with ClearCase. We have this RET Depot. What are those? Don't really know. So that really led to our transformation here at Delta Airlines. So Jasmine, why don't you talk a little bit more about our transformation here at Delta?
Absolutely. So this is really important to Delta and our IT organization. And it started with a new CIO, Rahul Samant, who joined us a couple of years ago. And he focused on a lot of different things in IT. One of those things that he decided to focus on was our speed to market and delivering business value faster to internal customers and in turn to our external customers like you, Derek, hopefully your customer. This allowed us to get the message out that this was coming from the top levels, right? The CIO is saying that we need to get this software out there faster. So obviously that gives everyone a big push to, get onto these new things and start accepting these new ideals. One of the ways that we did that is by modernizing our tools. As Chris mentioned, we previously used ClearCase, RET, an internal homegrown tool, and a lot of this stuff no one knew about, right? So we couldn't attract the top talent out there to help us with this transformation because no one really knew exactly what ClearCase or RET was. So by modernizing our tools, it helped us get those individuals out there who were at the top of the game and could help us with that transformation. The next thing that we did was centralize our technologies. So we decided to take, a central approach to all of the tool chains. And this was because there were tons of pockets of tools out there in Delta. We had individual teams using pretty much every tool you can name out there, just trying to survive, right? Just trying to get their specific software out there faster within their specific environment. With this, right, you had different teams doing different things in different ways. But by centralizing that, we have one seamless approach, right? Everyone uses these same tools and everything is standard. And it allowed us to centralize supporting these teams and also making sure that everyone solves the problems in the same ways. This also allowed us to bring teams along that were not quite as mature as those teams who had already adopted these products. So they also got the benefits of us introducing these tools. Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit more about how we modernize our applications here during the transformation?
Sure. So naturally, the transformation brought about a modernization of our applications. Since we were working in the ClearCase space with WebSphere applications and some older technologies, and that brought about modernizing our applications from the OS type to the types of technologies we're working with, whether that's building the application or deploying the application. So this obviously just brought about that transformation. And there's a lot of different types of tools we brought in. Obviously, Sonatype is one of them. But I'm going to go ahead and let Jasmine talk about the different tools that we've brought into the organization here.
Absolutely. So let's start off with Sonatype, right? Why not? So Sonatype has fulfilled that need for a place to store the enterprise artifacts, right? So before we were using the homegrown tool that was with flat file, and teams pretty much just went there to store everything and deployed from there as well. So Sonatype has filled that void. GitLab, we also adopted because of its distributed nature. It made it easier for teams to collaborate and to move quicker when integrating code. So that was a great add. Next, we also chose Jenkins. Jenkins is the most widely used and most widely integrated orchestration tool out there. And with it being so open and so recognized, it was natural for us to adopt that. And it has an extensive amount of capabilities out there whereas integration with all the other tools, and everyone knows it. Coming out of school, I knew what Jenkins was, and it's very modern. Lastly, we're adopting SonarQube just so that we can put a magnifying glass on better code quality and making sure that our code is where it needs to be, so that way we can be more confident when we're releasing new artifacts. Chris is going to talk a little bit more about what we wish we knew when implementing Sonatype Nexus.
Yeah, so this is really key, especially if you're looking to bring Sonatype Nexus into your organization, or if you already have, maybe there's a few things that we can help with, point out earlier on rather than later. So one thing is automate everything. Yes, we can, but really not so fast. So we hit a few roadblockers along the way, and one of those was, well, we didn't have all the necessary Groovy scripts to automate the installation and configuration process. So I just want to point out that after this presentation, please reach out to Jasmine or myself in Slack. We found some scripts on GitHub that Sonatype gave us, directed us towards. So they have all the Groovy files that allow you to create blob stores and create the repositories automatically. So we wanted to automate not only the installation of the product, but also the configuration. And really what that helps is it helps us not have snowflakes between our non-production system and our production system. So yes, we definitely say get ahead of your automation very early on, and make sure that you have all the necessary Groovy scripts. Something else to keep in mind early on is your retention, and to make sure that you set up the retention policies very early on. So here at Delta, we have noticed an increase in our data tremendously in the past couple of months. And really that started us running around and being like, hey, we need more disk space. We need to get rid of some snapshots. And what about all these releases? Do we really need all of these? So set up your retention policy early. So here at Delta, we started out keeping snapshots for 30 days that had been unused. And we have moved that down to 7 days. So basically just 1 week. So our app teams have not complained about that. Typically what we have found here at Delta is that once a snapshot has been created and published to Sonatype Nexus, after about a week, the engineer really doesn't need that snapshot anymore. Either that has been created as a release candidate, or it's really just not needed anymore. So we definitely would say go ahead and set up those early on so you don't have trouble later down the road. So Jasmine, why don't you talk about some of the things that we are glad that we implemented?
Yeah, so first and foremost, we are very excited that we separated our blob storage per repository type. And this is for a couple of reasons. First, it gave us the ability to view specific consumption of disk space. And secondly, it provided the dynamic capabilities for storage. So although we don't utilize it now, but should we need to in the future, we have the ability to add more storage to the specific blob store versus adding it to the entire disk when maybe not really it's needed there, right? So Chris, tell us a little bit more about our automated installation and why are we glad we did that?
Yeah, so going off of the previous slide, there's obviously some negatives to our automation process, but there's some great positives that have come out of this. So not only can we take our installation and we can upgrade it. So we can, yes, we can upgrade it in non-production and then upgrade it in production, and be confident with that. But we can also take our Nexus installation and we can install Nexus on another server with all the same configuration. So you don't have snowflakes between different instances throughout the environment. So that's just one big plus that you'll see, especially between non-production as you're testing things out and then production, is just really enforcing that automation and making sure everything is in your source control repository so that it's always applied. So yeah, Jasmine, why don't you tell us about some of our Sonatype's guidance?
Yeah, so a lot of these, disclaimer is the two previous things we're glad about, Sonatype actually recommended to us. And so that's why our third one has to recognize them, right? They really guided us during our initial engagement. So big shout out to Andrew and Fernando. They really put us on the right path and made sure that we had the appropriate policies in place when it comes to permissions and namespaces. Without them, I don't know that we could have done it as effectively. So thanks, guys. Now, to talk a little bit about onboarding our teams and how we did that here. First, you know, when you're bringing out new products and introducing new ideals, sometimes it's not a great idea to roll it out to the entire organization initially, but perhaps do it in a more controlled manner. So that's what we decided to do. We decided to take the pilot kind of route. We had smaller teams, some of which who had already been using Nexus open source product, on board to our enterprise version of Nexus initially. This allowed us to, one, learn from them since they had been using it at an enterprise level. We got to learn what type of things they needed. And two, it allowed us to fail in a controlled manner. So we got to try things out, figure out what type of things were easy, and then, you know, prove those out for scale. Chris is going to talk a little bit more about how we define those patterns.
Right. So it was very easy to see throughout the enterprise that we had a lot of applications using Ant and storing their source control in ClearCase. And so we had the migration from ClearCase to GitLab, but we also had the migration from Ant to Maven or Gradle. And when we started migrating all these apps to Maven or Gradle, that's where we started using Sonatype Nexus for our repository to download all of our dependencies, and all of our engineers started seeing the benefits of that instead of storing all of their dependencies inside of ClearCase or inside of the Ret Depot, and started separating those out. And so that was a huge success for all of our engineers. They were really super hyped about that because they were like, man, we're still using Ant, and there's a lot of other new stuff out here. So internally, we had a lot of positive feedback from engineers that they really wanted to start using the tools like Maven and Gradle. So where are we today? So just to kind of talk about that. So today we have 23 applications using Nexus, and we have 447 user count or connection counts. We have about 600 gigabytes of data stored. We have 2 data centers, and we have Nexus installed on 1 VM in each data center, and we'll talk a little bit more about our future state in just a few minutes. But that's kind of where we're at today. Jasmine, do you have anything else you'd like to add to that?
No, we just are currently still onboarding teams and rolling this out to the enterprise. We have a lot of different efforts that are happening when it comes to app modernization and just getting teams onto the new tool chain. So that's why you see that large jump right there in March of this year, right? Now that we have the full pipeline out there, teams are excited and they're ready to use these new tools, and we're happy that we can offer it to them.
One thing that we saw early on in the number, so we have 23 application teams currently using our enterprise Nexus. One thing that we saw early on is that people throughout the enterprise actually had their own Nexus stood up within their team. So we had to end up migrating them from their own Nexus to the enterprise Nexus. And so you may actually have that inside of your own organization. And so that's another reason why you want to set up some of those retention policies and automation early on.
Yep.
And So what kind of repositories did we start out with? So currently we are using Maven, which is our most popular, NPM, and then Docker. So Docker we are not really using for the developers. That's more for the enterprise Docker images. So our engineers are not creating Docker images and then actually pushing them up to Nexus. We're just using Docker for enterprise images that we basically can control that. So we also have NuGet. And so one key thing that we've actually found out about this repository type is that we have several .NET applications throughout the enterprise. And some of those actually don't produce a NuGet package. So you can't actually put the .NET package into the NuGet repository, and we've actually placed those into the Maven repository. So Jasmine, why don't you talk a little bit about why we started using raw repository?
Yeah, so the raw repository was recently introduced by Sonatype. Can't remember exactly when, but we've utilized it for primarily executables that we're delivering to workstations for Delta employees. And we're really finding, really good use cases for the raw repository. It makes it great to have a central location where we can store those items for teams that, aren't using Maven or NPM or Docker. So really great repository to have. Chris, talk a little bit more about where we are today regarding our pipeline specifically.
Sure. So here at Delta, we have been creating a standard pipeline for our applications. And Jasmine has already talked about some of the pieces to the pipeline. Obviously, GitLab and SonarQube, and Jenkins is the orchestrator. And at the end of this, you see we have Nexus as our binary repository. So Nexus is one piece to our puzzle that fits in nicely to our pipeline. So we have created the pipeline to be a more standard process through Delta. So you can take an application and you know exactly, you're going to use Maven, you're going to use Gradle, and then these are the steps that you have to take in order to get your application to production. So Jasmine, you have some more to add about this?
Yeah, so just to be clear, SpongeBob is not a part of the pipeline, but I wanted to add something to just show how happy individuals were when we presented the full pipeline solution for them. I'm just about as happy as SpongeBob when he gets the Krabby Patty. But we rolled out these things individually, right? So we had pockets of GitLab, people were using Nexus, but we didn't really have the full thing. So now that we have that full solution, everybody's really excited to come on board onto the pipeline.
Thanks, Jasmine. So the future state of where Delta is going to be going with Sonatype Nexus. So actually in the coming month, we're going to be implementing the high availability of Sonatype Nexus. So like I stated earlier, we have Nexus on one VM in 2 different data centers, and only one of those data centers is actually active. So we're going to be moving to a high availability state. Since we've had a tremendous growth throughout the enterprise and it's going to be increasing a lot, we want to make sure that we have a stable binary repository for our users. So we're going to be setting up Nexus on 3 VMs backed by NFS and SAN storage. And all of that's going to be done with our automation. So it's great that we can just take our automation and we can apply Nexus to those VMs. It makes our work a whole lot easier. Also, we're going to be looking into the artifact labeling and staging. So one key thing that our users have been asking for is, hey, how do I know that my release is actually, it's in prod or it's in INT from a Nexus perspective? So this way, when an application release makes it to production, we can come back and we can label it in Nexus and say, hey, this artifact is in production. And really that helps a few things. It helps us from an auditing standpoint. We know what artifacts have made it to production and what artifacts need to be audited and kept around. And then we can say, hey, all these artifacts, they never actually made it to production. So we can go ahead and delete some things after a certain period of time. So that really helps from us cleaning up stuff. So Jasmine, why don't you tell us a little more about our repositories and optimization in the future?
Yeah, so Sonatype introduces, they have tons of repository types out there out of the box that we get when you install Sonatype Nexus. So one of them that we are looking to leverage is the Yum repository, Yum hosted specifically. We have a lot of infrastructure teams that are utilizing the Yum central repository, and we would like to place some of the internal Delta packages in a place where everybody can access them, right? So it's not just a package on one server that gets SCP to another server so you can use it there. You just come to one Yum repository and get everything you need. So the next thing that we want to focus on is optimization. And this is the best word I could come up with to describe us, just staying on the bleeding edge of the new things that Sonatype introduces and trying to make sure that we keep it available for our customers. So this means, making sure we're purging artifacts frequently, making sure that our response time is good, and making sure that we're staying on top of, any issues that our users see.
So we just want to say thank you to Sonatype. We just want to say thank you to all the Delta people that were not in this presentation: Keenan, Artur, Aran, Varun, and Louis. Special thanks to Fernando as well from Sonatype. He meets with us weekly, and we talk about what our needs are and where we're going in the future. So we just want to thank you all, and we hope this presentation has been beneficial to you. We would definitely like to answer any questions if we have time now. We will also be in the Slack channel after this to answer any questions about our implementation or the journey that Delta has taken with Nexus. So thank you so much. Derek?
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. The number of things that you guys covered, just in terms of one, I'll point out the collaboration between you two and the back and forth was awesome. Usually we have one speaker first and then the next speaker. So the trade-off and interactivity was great. Also, I really like what you said about modernizing your IT infrastructure and the new CIO coming in and saying, if we're going to hire people, then we need to, make sure we have modern tools, because people are getting out of school and they're used to, Jenkins and GitLab and Maven and Nexus, and we need to have what people are trained for. And even the interesting point that you made, that when you went out to the business units, some of the Nexus instances already existed out there before you even got there. And I'm sure that was true with other tools in your infrastructure as well, as the developers knew they needed to use them, but it wasn't centralized yet in your tool stack. So, but I think, that strategy is, was clearly came through in your presentation. That you're trying to better standardize on those and optimize the development experience. And I also think, just as I've seen in your presentation and others, the kind of patterns of what people have adopted, we continue to see, Nexus, Jenkins, GitLab, SonarQube, Jira, Maven show up in all of these presentations over and over again. So there's, clearly a community out there of users like yourselves and other organizations that are using common tool sets, and there are lessons learned that we can share between all the organizations. So really happy to see that, and sharing kind of your lessons learned and what's working, what's not working, where to rely on Sonatype. One question I'll ask you just before we go into Slack. So you mentioned you Fernando and Andrew are helping you out on a regular basis. How much are they helping you out? Is this a couple minutes a week, or is this more intensive in terms of the time investment? How much are you kind of self-supportive versus needing support from Sonatype?
Yeah, so we've been able to, we basically meet with Fernando once a week. And if there's something that we need help with from, hey, how does this product work? And what is the best practice for high availability? We'll talk to Fernando about that, and we'll come up with a good solution. So from the aspect of the product is great on the side of, there's a lot of things in the product that help you keep up with cleaning out the data that is no longer needed. And if you need to check the logs, or if you need to set up some types of what am I looking for?
Or,
Yeah, new repositories, or if you have SSGM groups you need to add in there, and you need to add in more people. It's really just a self-service way from the admin's perspective. So there's not a lot there that we have to go and say, hey, we need help with this.
Yeah, and the support is great. I frequently interact when I face issues, whether it be with LDAP certificates or just random stuff. I'll shoot out an email to support at Sonatype, and usually it's Rich that responds. So I'm like, does he sleep?
No, he doesn't.
No, he doesn't. Okay, confirmed, right?
It's a trade secret.
Yeah, but he's super responsive, and we always get the help that we need. And Fernando's great about checking on our tickets and making sure that we're where we need to go and have what we need to do to succeed. So
I've also been able to reach out to like Jeffrey Hesse as well. On GitHub, there's a lot of tools like Slack to help talk about implementation and if you have a question and things like that, especially around like automation process. There's a lot of great resources out there and people that are doing the automation as well that can help out, that are really great.